All right, we did it. We're back for more. We didn't lose our jobs. We are here live on the Going for Two live YouTube channel with your Saturday night hangout, the Dynasty Saturday Night 5. If you're listening to the audio format, please subscribe, rate, and review. That would do us a big favor. I'm Brian, here with my co-host Josh. Josh, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. I'm very glad we didn't lose our jobs and get to keep doing this.
Yeah, how about that, right? And we're just about ready to kick off the 2022 season. We had the Thursday night game, but tomorrow's the first big 7 hours of Red Zone Sunday. So definitely looking forward to that. We both have very limited plans besides that going on. And so real quick, I'm not going to tell you what I do. Are you a check the scores while the games are going on, your fantasy scores while the games are going on guy, or are you not?
No, I have usually my laptop up, which it was easier when I was in less leagues. I used to be in 4 or 5 leagues, so I probably have to do something different. I used to have each league up in there with the live scoreboard, watching as I go. It's used in the red zone, so I can flip to that game. I used to be that big into it, but I'm in way too many leagues now, so I'm probably just going to watch red zone and just see what happens.
Yeah, I don't check during. I just I set my lineup, boop, and then we're good. I don't check again. Sometimes till Tuesday. When it comes to what the scores are, I turned off the sleeper notifications for like so and so scored a touchdown or whatever. Just let me enjoy my football.
I wish I could do that more.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a sponsor on board for tonight's episode. Tonight's episode is going to be what ifs for the 2022 season and their dynasty impact. So what if I told you No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today? Play in pick'em style contests versus other people for the shot at winning $150,000 or more. Download the app and use our promo code GF2 and get a deposit match up to $25. Choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot to win the big money every day. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20x your entry if you hit all your picks. Bet on up to 5 player props player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Again, our promo code is GF2. Use it at nohouseadvantage.com or download the app on the App Store to get a first deposit match of up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. And where do we play, Josh? In Dynasty leagues. And so today's episode, again, is 5 what ifs for 2022, but what they might mean for Dynasty. And I think we're going to kick it off with a topic that's on a lot of people's minds, and that's the Chiefs offense. So my first what if is, and some of I think all of mine are basically going to be the dark timeline of these things. Who knows, right? But like, what if the Chiefs offense struggles more than we expect with life after Tyreek? And it's not just necessarily, taking Tyreek out, but it's other things too, and other things that may happen or not, or might not happen, and how they find an identity, and maybe they're slow out of the gate, right? What if Sky Moore and Pacheco, don't live up to the hype, right? I mean, I was on Pacheco pre-draft, but I wasn't on him to this level. I mean, he's still a 7th rounder that doesn't break tackles well. So, what happens there? Sky Moore, what if he's not like worth all the hype? I was trading out of that area in the first round of 2022 rookie drafts because I think people got drunk on landing spot and he was going too high. A lot of people, including me, expect CEH to have a bounce back year this year, particularly at cost. What if he doesn't? Right? What if Mahomes can't adjust well to how the defenses are playing him now? What if Juju is just the meh PPR Juju that we've come to know and not OG Juju from when he was 21 years old, right? What if Kelsey starts to show his age this year? You can only go so long as an elite tight end, and sometimes we see guys fall off a cliff pretty quickly. And what are the implications of all these things for the dynasty landscape, particularly when it comes to value, rankings, right? Whose contracts are going to get signed and who's going to get an out in their contract or get cut? Like, for example, Juju, right? He's on a 1-year prove it. What happens to him, right? What happens to him if he doesn't impress? What kind of contract does he get? Does he stay there? Does he slip in the rankings and all that? So my what if is, what if things go south and we're seeing, say, I don't know, Mahomes outside the top, 5 dynasty quarterbacks, right? What if we're seeing, Sky Moore, fail to make, I don't know, say the top 36 this time in 2023, right? What if people are just way out on CEH because he's just not impressive and, he slips from, say, the early 20s where he is now to, further down into, out of that RB3 range. This, and I think the Miami offense too, and how it goes, can really impact the landscape of dynasty at multiple positions, right? But your what if is in fact a rebuttal to mine.
Yeah. So I basically looked at the offense this year, and I'm one of the only people that I've seen, not the only one, but the vast minority of the people that think this might be a good thing for the Chiefs offense to lose Tyreek Hill. First, I'll just start off like last year, they were already a good offense. So even if they don't take a step forward, staying like where they were would be fine. They were 3rd in yards per game, 4th in pass yards a game, and 4th in points per game total. So they're already a top 5 offense pretty much across the board outside of rushing yards. Going into the year, their offensive line is ranked 9th by PFF. So they have a, above average offensive line. And I'm in on the CEH hype. I had him last year. He was a little disappointing, but he missed time and didn't seem completely healthy when he returned. He's also only 23 years old. So I think as long as, he can stay healthy, and if he is actually healthy, he'll be much better. And on the running backs, their depth this year, I think, is just much better. McKinnon's healthy. He missed a ton of time last year. I'm not as high on most as Pacheco, but, he's still a decent option. And also just adding Rojo, Ronald Jones. I think all that's better than what they had last year with CEH, Darrell Williams, and Derek Gore.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's already an improvement. I also think they have much better wide receiver depth just across the board as opposed to it dropping off with Pringle and Demarcus Robinson. And then they don't really lose a deep threat by losing Tyreek Hill because they have MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's actually a faster downhill runner than Hill, although I will say Hill is much more quicker, more elusive, faster in his cuts. But MVS clocked the 2nd fastest sprint speed last year in the NFL at 22 miles an hour. So when he gets going, he is very fast and a very deep threat, also given his size. And also, I'm buying in on Juju this year. Having a good downfield threat and someone who can run some mid to underneath routes will help them just from stacking like 2 safeties high like they did last year just to keep Tyreek Hill and everything underneath. Because Juju's still – I think he's still got a path to break out still. He's younger. He's not like 27, 28. And in his career, he's had years of 917 yards with 7 touchdowns, 1,426 yards with 7 touchdowns. And then I think it was 2020, he had 831 yards and 9 touchdowns. And that's with Big Ben as he was declining. So I think as long as he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be one of Patrick Mahomes' favorite targets outside of Kelsey. He's got good touchdown numbers every year, and Mahomes is by far the best quarterback he's ever played with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Kelsey's still elite. Even if I don't think he'll fall off a cliff, but even if he does decline a little, he's still probably going to be a top 5 tight end, given his target share and usage. So I see Tyreek Hill leaving as a good thing, honestly, for the Chiefs, and I think it's just going to open up the play calling so they can be a little more creative with what they do, outside of just targeting Kelsey and Hill.
So my what if, was like, what if things go south and we see the dynasty landscape change with the rankings and trade values getting all topsy-turvy, based on that, right? At least from where we think they're going to be, right? Your what if, what's the upshot of that? Like, what is the answer to what if? Like, what if they do well? What does that mean for us as dynasty managers?
I think if they do well, I think Pacheco will be a big part of that. So I think his dynasty his dynasty stock would go up a little bit. CEH obviously only being 23. If he can put together a full solid year, I think behind that line, I think he'll be fine. I think his stock will rise also. The receivers, MVS, I'm still not that interested in him dynasty long term.
Mm-hmm.
So if he has a good year, he'd be a good trade piece maybe to someone who needs some receivers. Sky Moore, I think he'll end up playing over Mecole Hardman. I mean, his stock's already pretty high, so it might stay about the same. But, I mean, it'd still be a good thing. And Kelty, I think as he gets older, this is probably the last year he's going to be a tight end one.
Okay. All right, so my next what if is about a young quarterback. What if Trevor Lawrence has a bad second year, or more precisely, a second bad year, right? Now, obviously, the coaching change from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson, we're expecting things to improve, right? They've surrounded him with improved weapons. I mean, Zay Jones is competent. Christian Kirk, I don't think he's a 1. I think he got overpaid, but certainly an improvement from what was there. Marvin Jones is competent, and he'll catch some passes, right? He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. And I think he'll bounce back because I don't think Urban Meyer was really using him at all well last year. I mean, as I was talking about last night on another podcast, he kicked the kicker, right? The coach kicked the kicker. So we think things are going to improve, right? But what if it doesn't, right? Can Peterson and those small upgrades be enough? Is the O-line good enough to protect him moving forward? Say he puts together another stinker of a year, are people going to be totally out on him? How long a leash does he get? Right now, he's my QB8, which I'm told is high. QB8 for Dynasty, which I'm told is high. If he puts a meh year together, I don't know. I don't know that I can really have him in the top 12 anymore. Especially if somebody who we don't expect has a good year and climbs up. Or if Fields is even better than I think he's going to be, or whatever the case may be, right? We can see a situation where T-Law would slide out of the top 12. For what it's worth, ESPN is projecting him as the quarterback 16 overall for 2022 and quarterback 20 points per game. Ranks are ranks, numbers are numbers, right? If he's quarterback 16, right, but the numbers are very respectable, maybe I'm still in and knocking him down maybe a couple notches depending on what other people do. But if he's over at QB 21, QB 22, right? I mean, I'm out, right? This could be a make or break year for a number of quarterbacks. You hate to do it in a second year with people, but that's the NFL these days, right? We don't wait, for quarterbacks that much, right? I think Hurts is a make or break year. I think T-Law is a make or break year. And another guy that you're going to talk about soon is a make or break year. So what if T-Law sucks this year? What do you think?
Yeah. There's always a chance that happens. I actually just wrote him up on my second going for 2 article for a bounce back quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that does go into Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson's 5-year tenure in Philadelphia, his offense finished outside of the top 10 only once. I know they had better options, but I like him as a hire there. I think he's going to be able to use the weapons much more effectively than Urban Meyer was. He's literally bottom of the barrel. But I also have Trevor Lawrence 14th in my Dynasty rankings, so I'm obviously weighing in the chance that it just doesn't go as planned, even though he's one of the better recruits coming out of college.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, but I think based on what we've been talking about together already in the past, you I think have some of the older guys a little higher up. So, like for example, where do you have like Russ?
I have Russell Wilson 9.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And then I think I also have Trey Lance higher. I also have Justin Fields higher. I had Matthew Stafford higher, but I need to adjust that. So I do not think he's better. But so even still, I'd have him 13 or 12 cars ahead of him by one spot.
As somebody who's bullish on Fields, I thought relative to other people, I'm still surprised that you have him over Lawrence.
Yeah, I have him 11 in my rankings.
Mm-hmm. I have him 11 too. I just have him a couple spots below instead of a couple spots above. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So your next what if is what if
Trey Lance struggles and is benched after the bye week?
Okay.
But before I say this, I do like Trey Lance. These are all hypotheticals.
Oh yeah,
this is in the realm of possibility here.
Right. These are all things that could happen, and how are they going to affect what we do this time in 2023? Say, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I have it where he's benched by the bye week. Their bye week is week 9. And in that time, even though the Rams didn't look that great, they still won the Super Bowl last year. They played the Rams twice, and they played Kansas City. And, they also played Denver, Carolina, and Chicago. And I think especially Chicago, all three of those, honestly, are going to be a tougher challenge than people might give them credit for. I think all those teams will be a little better than expected. And then also 49ers, the coaching staff, the industry, or the whole group and the fans all have very high expectations for the team. They don't want to start out with only 2 or 3 wins by week 9. And I think just Jimmy G not signing anywhere, I think he's always going to be back there. If Trey Lance has a few bad games in a row, there's always going to be people in the media, calling for him to be the starter. And also being a good fantasy quarterback doesn't matter to the coaches. Like Trey Lance, even if they don't win games, he'll still probably be pretty good, top 15 quarterback, just given his rushing upside. But if he doesn't put the team in a chance to win the games, he's going to get benched, especially with Jimmy G there, because he's shown that he can be very effective and win games in the system, whether it's like sexy or kind of ugly. He's shown that he can get the job done if he needs to. And then just on top of that, you have Kittle already hurt, missing a game. Mitchell has his own durability concerns, even though I'm not that worried about him. So if they lose some starters, they might want to turn to a veteran who knows how to deal with a little less than Trey Lance.
Okay. So if that happens, ... what's the impact, do you think, for Dynasty managers?
I don't think it really just depends on how bad Trey Lance is. If he just shows he's unpolished, raw, but still shows some potential and shows some flashes of being great, he'll drop a little bit, but I would just see that kind of as a buy low opportunity given his age and experience. Mm-hmm. Jimmy G, he's where he's at. Even if he does good, I don't think it's going to change move the needle for him. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it affects Ayuk, Debo, and all them, because I think they'll do fine regardless of the 2 quarterbacks.
Okay, that's fair. I'm thinking about a pretty good fantasy quarterback that might not be good enough to stay on the field narrative.
I was waiting for this, honestly. I know where you're going. I was waiting for it.
Kind of sounds like my boy Jalen Hurts, but that's just going to have to be a running joke all year. No matter who's right, we just have to give each other crap for it, right? All right, so my next what if is, what if CeeDee Lamb doesn't have a top 12 season? What if CeeDee Lamb isn't the guy we think he is? Now, those are two different things, right? Because you can have a less than top 12 season, lower than top 12 season, and it's not necessarily all on you, right? There are a lot of factors that go into it, right? But it could be an indication that he's not the guy that we think he is, right? So, I looked across a lot of rankings, and most people have him at least in their top 5, right? I think more often than not, I see him at 3. Some people sneak Cup ahead of him as 3, which I think is ludicrous. But he's consensus-ish, in folks' Dynasty top 5 rankings, right? He's part of, for me, a big tier of wide receivers after the big 2, right? I have bunch of guys that I like roughly the same, that all have pluses and minuses and all could kind of go one way or another, right? So my 3 is Lamb, right? At 4, I have Debo. 5, I have Waddle. I know that's higher than most people. A.J. Brown 6, Metcalf 7. People are, just because he's eating 1 year of the quarterback, people are bumping him down to like 10 or 12, and I don't see it. And then I have Diggs at 8, right? And that's like a tier for me, right? And yeah, obviously we don't see too many dark timelines for Diggs, but he is, he is already 28, right? Yeah. But like that tier of wide receivers, a lot of things could happen, right? Depending on a lot of factors. And will Lamb be where we have him now this time next year? For reference, his going for 2 composite is 3. Josh is the low man there at 6. DLF composite is 3. The low person there is 9. Fantasy Pros, the range is very small, between 3 and 4. And his DLF ADP in startups is he's coming off the board at wide receiver 4, right? So, it's in that range. People have faith that this guy can be electric, right? And he's done well, but is he that guy? Is he that top 5 dynasty wide receiver? We have, in 16 games in 2020, wide receiver 20, weeks 1 to 16. And I say that because that's the fantasy playoffs, right? Wide receiver 28 in points per game. An improvement in 2021 to wide receiver 14, weeks 1 through 16, and wide receiver 15 points per game. According to ESPN rankings in 2022 projections, looks like we lost Josh for a minute here. He's projected to be wide receiver 7 and wide receiver 8 on a points per game basis. If he's in that range of wide receiver 7 and wide receiver 8 as far as like points per game go, if he can fall in that range, I'm probably still comfortable keeping him in my top 5, right? Will he be number 3 or 4 though? I don't know. I don't know if he's that next guy up after the big 2 of Chase and Jefferson. So, what if Debo has another monster year? Maybe he's number 3. What if I'm right about Waddle? What if I'm wrong about Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, right? And what if all that is accompanied by Lamb having a wide receiver 10 season, so to speak, right? I think if he can eat up, a good amount of yards, 1,200, 1,300 yards, hit the end zone as much as we think he can, then he's going to be a guy that I'm going to want in the top 5 still. But, it's likely that he'll hit the mark that I need to see, but, it's also a non-zero chance that he doesn't. Welcome back, Josh.
My computer just was not having it.
It's okay. So I was just riffing there on Lamb a little bit. Your next what if is also about a player, one that I'm intrigued by as well. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
All right. Let me get it pulled up. There it is. Okay. So my third what if is, what if Jameis Winston is a top 12 quarterback? So right now he's going off the board as quarterback 21. I have him a lot of places as my second quarterback in a super flex league. And just to touch on last year, before he got hurt, he went for 1,170 yards, 14 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. Without a very good receiving core, honestly, and showing that he didn't turn the ball over a lot is a very good sign for me. He also has sneaky scrambling upside. He had a 90 PFF rush grade, which was 3rd behind only Josh Allen and teammate Taysom Hill. He's not a very good design runner, but when plays break down, he's shown the ability to make something out of nothing. And then last year's targets went to Marquez Callaway, Hardy, Traquan Smith, and Troutman, who I do like Troutman, but none of them went over 700 yards. And They just weren't the best options to throw to, but he showed the ability to still make some plays, still get some touchdowns. And touching on that, he even has much improved weapons this year with Chris Olave coming onto the team and Michael Thomas. So I don't think he's
hold
healthy.
Hold on a second. We forgot my contractual obligation. Olave.
There we go. So we have Olave. Thomas is, I don't think he's still healthy, but he's going to be on the least a limited snap numbers, and that's still going to draw some defenders. And then even though Kamara had a down year last year, there's going to be positive regression with Winston as the quarterback. He's 5th in fantasy points per game for running back. And that should lead to overall improvement for the whole offense, as well as another good target to throw to besides Olave and Michael Thomas. And where he's going on the board, I think there's a great chance to get a great return in your value for that. I honestly like the Saints a good bit in that division, even though I'm a Falcons fan.
So right now, where do you have him ranked in Dynasty?
Let me pull that up. Right now it's 21.
Yeah.
And I might actually bump him up after I did all this research. So
I
think
I'm
right around 18.
Around there with you. So you're gonna probably bump up to 18. I think I have him at 24, but I'm open-minded. So let's say he does, he's recovered from his injury. He's got his eye surgery. He has a top 12 quarterback finish. What does that do for Dynasty? Where does he go from 18? What does that mean for Olave?
If he has a good year, I think I already have Olave really high, as we talked about last, but I think others will, catch up to that. I think he'll be going as a, high floor wide receiver 2 with possible wide receiver 1 upside, because I don't think Thomas has much left. So I think if Jameis Winston takes a step forward, Olave is also going to take a step forward. And I think it also boosts Troutman, too, if he can stay healthy.
Right. And checking in here is my friend NBA Rigged. I believe Julia is the first name. I get lost sometimes because I'm so used to seeing Discord handles and I forget actual human names. But yes, that's my friend Julia from the FF Face Off Discord, saying hi on this beautiful Saturday night.
Yeah, welcome.
And so, let's see. So I think I'm definitely open-minded to Winston. I think I'm probably dark timeline on Michael Thomas a little bit, and, curious to see if I'm right about Olave and if I'm right about Troutman. I kind of think, though, like, it's the type of offense, it's the type of team, and he's the type of quarterback where if they, say if a defense shuts down the running game that day, or, really takes away a receiver that he was going to rely on for that, game plan, right? Like, I don't know that they have enough, or that he has enough, right, to really work around that. So that's why I'm also a little cautious, but, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I don't take much arm twisting to get him ahead of Aaron Rodgers in my rankings. Like, I'm pretty much out on Rodgers for the foreseeable future, which is pretty much the rest of his career. So,
it could also boost up Marquez Callaway too, even though he was once highly touted. He's still talented, but where he's going, like, I've just basically got him on one of my backbench pieces. They could bump him up to a wide receiver 4 or 5. If it takes off, it'd be a better opportunity than he's had yet.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of look at him now as like he's practically free, but he's also like somebody who's on the chopping block, for me, right? But if I've got a roster big enough and he's still on there, I mean, and you got Winston, who likes to throw deep. Yeah. We'll see. Yeah. All right. My next what if is, what if no rookie wide receiver finishes in the top 36? So going into the 2022 draft class, people were like, oh, it's a down class, and other people are like, it doesn't get enough love or whatever, right? But pretty much everybody agreed that the highlight of the class were the wide receivers, particularly, sort of like the top end of the wide receivers before things kind of flattened out. That it was deep, but it was like deep and flat, So one of the reasons that teams have been reluctant to give that second contract to wide receivers is because we're seeing a trend now in the NFL where rookie wide receivers are stepping in and contributing sooner than they used to, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of factors that go into that, like more colleges passing more, using pro style offenses or whatever, right? That sort of thing. But it used to be that like, oh, rookie running backs, yeah, you can plug them in, they'll contribute. Wide receivers, we'll see, right? But we have rookies, stepping in and doing fine now. So this was supposed to be the strength of the class, and folks have a number of them highly ranked, right? I'm probably lower than consensus on a few of them, but I'm right around in the ballpark with a bunch of them as well, right? And as this trend is happening, we're seeing that wide receivers aged, say, 26 to 28 are becoming more affordable in Dynasty, both in startups and in trades, right? So if this class doesn't perform the way that some people expect, right, I think their Dynasty rankings are going to stagnate or falter. And you're going to see those 26 to 28-year-old wide receivers maybe not be so cheap anymore, right? And folks are saying, well, Brian, come on, we've got Olave, right, that we were just talking about, and you both said you were higher than him, higher than consensus on him last week, right? We've got, multiple first rounders, right? We got the Titans trading AJ Brown and making and bringing in Treylon Burks, right? We've got the off-season camp darling George Pickens. Okay, I got you. Like, I'm not saying that I think they're all going to be outside the top 36, but ESPN does. All right. Wilson, they're projecting at wide receiver 46, 48 in points per game. Jameson Williams, it's a little rough because he's going to miss. He's going to miss time, so he's wide receiver 74. But points per game, I think they had him in the 40s or early 50s. With Olave, wide receiver 45, 46 points per game, right? Drake London, wide receiver 37, 41 points per game. And I'm probably lowest on London out of all these guys, especially, a relative to consensus. Jahan Dotson, wide receiver 53, 56 points per game. George Pickens, wide receiver 61, wide receiver 68 points per game. And Treylon Burks, wide receiver 51 and wide receiver 54 on a points per game basis. Those are like pretty much the top 7 guys that people had coming in and out of the draft. So, this may be, very plausibly a disappointing year for rookie wide receivers relative to the expectations that people have. And I think, who knows, right? Like 23 is supposed to be a Messiah class, right? But maybe we don't trust wide receivers as much. Or maybe this is one blip year, right? Or maybe those 26 to 28-year-old wide receivers now aren't so cheap. Maybe we rethink, a Garrett Wilson or an Olave, right? Maybe, neither Mariota nor Ritter are competent enough quarterbacks to make London matter much, right? So, I mean, these things are plausible, and I think will have a big impact on the wide receiver landscape when it comes to Dynasty.
Yeah. So are those on the ESPN projections? Like they're okay. See, that actually say what you want about ESPN and their rankings, but I'm pretty sure if I'm not mistaken, Mike Clay does the projections. He's one of the most accurate projections. So seeing that it's a little eye-opening because I do trust Mike Clay and his projections more so than, their expert rankings and their ADPs and all that stuff, which, can be laughable sometimes. But I mean, these projections I think he was the most accurate as far as projections go last year. So that is eye-opening. And as far as I've been buying in on the Deontay Johnsons, the Marquise Browns, those 25, 26-year-olds. I've been getting them in like the 5th, 6th, 7th round while people are taking Treylon Burks. I only got Olave in rookie drafts. Otherwise, he was going before I was wanting to get him. So I think if that does happen, it would definitely, slide the scale back for age for wide receivers to where those guys are more desirable and their price does go up. So I think that's really interesting.
What's your number 4? What if?
My number 4 what if
Whose
is
house?
shit, how can I not find it? There it is. Okay. What if the Rams offense is overall disappointing? And I had already started working on this before the week 1. I don't really look too much into week 1 because the Packers put up 3 points against the Saints last year in week 1 and they were fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there are some troubling signs after watching the game for how their offense could take a huge step back. And honestly, if that did happen, I was going to touch on the implication. Kupp would probably be the only player we're drafting at ADP. Maybe not so much in Dynasty as he gets another year. But I think he's the main one that I don't have them not being as good affecting because he showed he could still be good. I think he's that much better than a lot of other people. But their offensive line was middle of the road, and they showed signs of a weakness already by how quickly they were getting hit. Stafford didn't have time to throw, didn't have time to scan the field. A lot of that was the Bills being one of the top defenses. But at the same time, this was also an issue some last year. He's already sacked 7 times. So they're not getting off to a great start for protecting him. And then touching on Stafford, he has a constant elbow concerns. I don't blame anything on that, on what we saw in the game the other day. It just looked more like they were outmanned and outmatched, and he didn't have time to throw where he wanted. But it's always troubling when there's an elbow issue on your throwing arm, especially for someone getting older in his career like Stafford is. Akers didn't get the snaps he expected, and that would be a huge dynasty implication because he's going very high. I only have 1 share of him, and I'm kind of mad I do now. They showed that Henderson took most of the snaps, and he could be the lead back. And if he is, I think that would just kind of crush Cam Akers' stock, at least for 1 year. I'll touch more on that in one of my next points as far as coming off injuries.
Mm-hmm.
But Henderson only averaged 3.6 yards per carry, and Akers had 0. So they at least already didn't show the ability to run the ball well. And even last year, they weren't the best running. So it's kind of hard to get the run game going and be able to do play action because they had 5th in play action passes last year as far as yards go. Mm-hmm. So I think if they can't run the ball effectively, they can't protect Matt Stafford, it's just going to be kind of ugly. And that would also make Allen Robinson could be a bust. You always got to figure that in. Mm-hmm. I actually, touching on A-Rob real quick, I say buy low on him while you can. Looking at the film, he was open a lot in the game. Stafford, like I said, just didn't have time to throw. They didn't practice much together. They haven't played much together. But I think he'll be okay. But if they do take a huge step back, it could hurt him. And they also have the hardest strength of schedule in this season. They play by far the hardest schedule. So it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, well, I'm going to push back on Akers just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like I am, as you said, I don't overreact to one game no matter what. Yeah. I think people were just looking for, like confirmation bias on burying Akers because people were just down on him, right? Like the line was not playing well, right? Right. So if you're Sean McVay, right, do you play your veteran running back or do you play your 23-year-old running back, who's got a brighter future and is still recovering from an Achilles, so to speak, right? Do you run him out there against that offensive line or do you run Darrell Henderson out there against that offensive line? Listen, I'm not saying that I'm in Sean McVay's head or that, Akers is going to, go to the moon this year or anything like that. I just think people are looking for a reason to bury Akers and just it's 1 week. Let's be careful. Akers is the better back. He's gonna probably get, especially as the season goes on, more of the touches than Henderson. Is he gonna be, an elite top 5-6 dynasty running back? No, I don't see that for him. But I think people are dancing on his grave, and it's a little premature.
No, I agree with you on that, but
yeah. So before we get to a couple of our last points here, Julia chiming in again and saying a compliment for Josh here. Great analysis on the Rams' outlook. Great depth on the offensive philosophy and player usage and schedule. Yeah, I didn't know
Thank you.
about the about the strength of. I mean, they're Super Bowl champs, so you kind of assume that like it's going to be a tough schedule. But yeah, that's an important point. Got a couple questions here too from Julia before we get to another comment. So she's talking. We've been talking about this on Discord about mobile quarterbacks and things like that, right? So she's asking about balancing between the better talent and the higher risk of getting injured. So an example that she uses here is, Jalen Hurts, who might have higher ceiling, versus Mac Jones, who has, a safer floor. And perhaps one of the reasons Mac Jones is safer is because Jalen Hurts could get more dinged up because he runs more. Now, there's a whole lot to this. Like, you know me, and it's like it's only a cheat code if you can pass first. And I don't think Jalen Hurts can pass very well. So I have him only one spot above Mac Jones right now because I'm just not a huge Mac Jones fan either.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong on Hurts, I'll adjust, right? But it's basically like the upside for Hurts gets him one rank above, and Mac Jones is sort of like meh vanilla-ness gets him, number 17 as opposed to Hurts 16. You I think are not only higher on Hurts, but maybe you have a different philosophy with the running and stuff like that.
Yeah, across the board, I try not to bake in injury risks too much unless it's just like they've been injured for like 3 years in a row, like maybe Mostert, people like that. I try not to look too much into that because the way football is, Saquon Barkley, he came back and he just stepped on someone's foot and it just like tore up his ankle. So, I mean, things can happen to anybody on any play. So I try not to let that keep me from getting upside on a player. And that is kind of why I have Jalen Hurts a lot higher just for that upside. And as far as like Mac Jones, I think he's good depending on the format. I reach for him in Scott Fishbowl, which goes on quarterback accuracy. Mm-hmm. And he was one of the only rookies, him and Justin Herbert, to pass for, I can't remember the yardage, but it was over 65% for as a rookie. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on the format for that, but I don't let injury risk keep me from getting upside players that I believe in.
Okay. And just real quick, somebody commenting on believe the Rams here. Rough for the O-line until Brian Allen comes back from his knee procedure. Thank you to Mr. Scampers for that. Tell us, do you know much more about this Brian Allen fella? I am notoriously oblivious when it comes to offensive linemen.
No, I'm not as familiar enough with the LA Rams to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know they have like Havenstein. He's about the only one I'm familiar with, mm-hmm. but not enough to. I mean, he's probably pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. I was just joking about it last night. Actually, that's one reason why I showed the comment and brought it up.
They said he's the center for the Rams.
He's the center for the Rams. Okay, yeah,
which is very important position.
Very important. Oh yeah. That's super important. Yeah. All right, so time for our last what if, right? And I think I have one that might slide into yours a little bit, right? CMC. What if CMC has a top 3 RB season, right? And there's a caveat to this too, or at least an additional bit here, right? Because of the injuries and people were kind of down on him about this is a couple of years in a row, he's not reliable to stay on the field. We saw his price lower, we saw his ranks lower, and wouldn't you know it, coming around to a new season, reports are good, right? And all of a sudden, including me, CMC's climbing up those ranks again. His price is getting higher, right? You see some people even ranking him like Dynasty RB 2 or 3, right? So I think I have him 5. Yeah.
I have him second for Dynasty.
Okay. Yeah. So, but what if that RB3 season, though, is partly because of a dark timeline for other running backs? So, it goes without saying that the Dynasty landscape for running back and wide receiver can look very different year to year, no matter what, right? But I was kind of looking at like who I had sort of in a row there, and I said, damn, like, I could give a bad story about like just about any one of these guys, like a plausible bad story, right? Najee, foot, right? Liz Frank isn't like just something you just, laugh at, right?
Yeah.
And he is a high volume guy. Like he's not very efficient, so he needs the high volume. And sure, he got 14,000 touches last year, but what if, the coaches say, well, we can't do that again this year? Or what if, the Steelers offense isn't moving the ball, all right? So Najee isn't getting on the field, to get those touches. What if, Pickens is really good and now they have, 4 reliable pass catchers, right? And Najee's not getting maybe as many targets, right? Or they're not focusing on the run game as much. Right? Javonte Williams, right? I mean, I have him 4, but it's an upside ranking, right? I mean, the split with Melvin Gordon looks to be, closer than Javonte truthers like me would like. Even if it's like 60-40, that could continue to be annoying. Plus, Russ now on that team, you're looking at, really good pass catchers. So maybe the running back targets decrease. I have to go back and look at the stats, but I don't really recall Russ being like, a high check down, quarterback, right? So Eckler, right, who I love, right? He was my bold prediction last year that he would be a top 5 running back, right? But you've heard the team and him say, well, last year all that running between the tackles was a little more than we'd like to do with him. We need to get back to kind of what we used to do, right? So, or maybe he gets hurt, right? Or maybe both, right? Because we've seen him, get dinged up here and there. Right? Saquon Barkley, right? It's been since 2018 that we've seen a good Saquon, right? And what if the Giants are bad, right? Yeah, I think they'll be better. I think Dable is much better than Jason Garrett, right? And they drafted an offensive lineman and that sort of thing. But what if they're still, Joe Mixon, right? There was a few games last year where they were really committed to like, no, we're going to establish the run. It was like kind of like in the middle of the year, we're going to establish the run, and they were really, and Mixon was eating, and then that kind of was like, not so much anymore. What if that pass percentage stays increased for the Bengals, right? Breece Hall, he's a rookie. He hasn't played a snap in the NFL. I think Carter's going to have a role. I think people have long been underestimating Michael Carter's role in this offense. And what if the team is not that good, right? Like it's the Jets, right? Dalvin Cook, right? He's, in that running back age where you're starting to say, and, he gets dinged up often. Maybe his volume decreases. We've heard that new offense is, going to be more pass heavy, right? J.K. Dobbins, you're going to talk about him, so I'll be brief. What if he's, slower to come back and, Lamar Vulture's work, et cetera. Alvin Kamara also pushing it as far as dynasty running back age goes. And what if the Saints struggle? What if, the idea of, Winston being limited and the usage tree sort of, has a little bit of top heaviness to it. And then there's not much like, what if, right? Nick Chubb, the Browns may suck without Watson, right? And they may not move the ball, and he doesn't have much PPR upside to begin with. No. So those are all guys that I have ranked between like 3 and like 13-ish, right? There's a dark timeline that's possible, right, for a number of those guys, which could help CMC get that top 3 season. So what if he gets that top 3 season? I think you're going to see people very excited to keep him in the dynasty top 3, right, next year, right? But if it's also because of that dark timeline for a few of those guys, then things get a little topsy-turvy, right? Then you have a big chunk of running backs, right? From say, I don't know, 5-ish, right, to say like a high RB2, where
the run back dead zone just got massive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously that's not going to happen to all of them, right?
Oh yeah,
but And also add into that, what if people are wrong about Akers and Eli Mitchell, right? So what if Ken Walker is better than I think he is, right? So, there's a lot that could really toss up the dynasty running back rankings, and I'm really excited to see some of these things play out. Obviously, I don't wish a dark timeline on everybody, but I just thought it would be interesting to make the case that besides CMC having a healthy year, it's plausible that a number of running backs behind him have a very bad year, right? And one of them being Dobbins, which is a guy you're going to talk about.
Yeah, I want to hit. I could see that timeline happening, especially if given McCaffrey's upside when he's healthy. If he misses like 3 or 4 games but plays the rest, if some of this happens to some of these guys, he could definitely still finish the top 3. I mean, he made a lot of great points. Like Najee's not going to get the targets he did. Javonte, Melvin Gordon still looked good regardless of his age. So I think a lot of that stuff is very plausible to happen. And just to get into Dobbins, my 5th one is, what if players coming off ACL and Achilles injuries are just overall fantasy disappointments this year? I'm very iffy about soft tissue injuries because I know trying to hastily return, or if you try and come back a little too soon, it can lead to other injuries because you're favoring, the other leg, you're just trying not to put weight on that, but putting more stress on other ones. And then if you also don't let it heal enough, it can be chronic. It can never fully heal back. You won't ever have the burst or the quickness that you might have had before. And so getting into a few of the players I think this might affect, J.K. Dobbins is a first. I'll start out by saying I have probably 4 or 5 shares of J.K. Dobbins, so I hope this isn't how it goes, but it is very possible. He's going off as RB20, 50th player overall. So he's got pretty high ADP up in the RB2. And just a week or two ago, he was seen limping after doing a pretty basic drill in practice, not one where he was running, cutting. So it's showing that he's still not 100% regardless of what he tweets out. The Ravens have also showed that they have multiple other running back options and proved they can be successful without a stud running back like J.K. Dobbins. They were successful with Alex Collins, Devontae Freeman, Latavius Murray. Even though they're not impressive, given Lamar's rushing upside, the way the offense is built, they can still be good. And then you can also see a month, hopefully that's all it is, of limited workload. So if he does come back, he's not going to be the workhorse back, in which at ADP that would make him a little bit of a disappointment because you're expecting him, to be there, be getting 10 to 12, 15 points a game, and that just won't happen if he has limited touches like that. Also on to Cam Akers. He's going as RB17, even higher, 37th overall. And there's not much data about people coming off of Achilles injuries, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Because they haven't.
Yeah. So it's really hard to tell because in the 2021 playoffs, I thought they rushed him back. He looked sluggish. He didn't look like he was like he used to, and he just wasn't efficient running the ball. And then even in week 1, there's signs that if he's healthy, they're playing very, very careful with him. Like you only get 3 carries for 0 yards, wasn't targeted. They made Henderson the lead back. And it's kind of a red flag, even though like he's 23, he's very young. I just don't think he's back to being himself quite yet. Not saying he won't be. And if the usage continues like that, or if they still it's a full 50-50 committee, he's going to be a bust at where he's going. Some people have him as our RB1. It's just, it's not going to be good. And then James Robinson's the other one I'm going to touch on. And while everyone does heal differently, seeing Akers, who's a year or two younger, not return to form, it does make me worried about James Robinson. He's going to RB40, so not quite as high. But that's still the 106th player overall based on Fantasy Pros. So if he comes back, he might not be as effective. He'll lose his power, his burst and his strength to break through tackles. And if he doesn't have that, he might just turn into like a Mike Davis who just, he gets what he can. And he's just 3 or 4 yards every play, but that's not what people are drafting him for. Mm-hmm. And he supposedly doesn't have limitations coming into week 1, but I still think they're going to ease him back into a prominent role. Mm-hmm. So it's only a matter of time to see how long he's featured like he was as the number 1 back, with ETN being the 3rd down back.
Yeah, I'm hoping that J-Rob does well
Me
this
too.
year. UDFA, and then you want to see this. You want to see this guy. You want to see this guy, do well, right?
Absolutely, I like him a lot.
I want to shoot him up my rankings. So looks like we got one more question from Julia here. I don't know that we can unpack all of these, right? But she's talking about quarterbacks, dynasty quarterbacks, and who's on a short leash and who's safe, say, for the next few years. I would say Hurts is on the shortest leash. I'd say Tua, people think, is on a short leash and shouldn't be. I think Mac Jones is he's fine. He's not going to be dynamic, but that's going to be his job, and he's just going to be a mediocre, quarterback for however long he is. I think Lance and Lamar are the more interesting ones because of the contract, right? He just turned down something, then he's going to make, I think, $23 million and then be franchise tag next year, and then who knows, right? So that could be interesting too. I mean, I don't think there's any sort of leash there. It's a matter of where's he going to be in a couple of years. Lance, I wouldn't call him short leash, but they did restructure Garoppolo, so I don't know. He's kind of the question mark for me. What do you think?
Yeah, so in that point, I think Trey Lance, with Jimmy G being there and it being his first actual full season, I think he does have the shortest leash. Then it would probably be Tua, even though I think just based on the other players, I think Tua would be the next one. I have Hurts on a little bit longer leash, mainly because I'm higher on his upside. But I think given his weapons, he can make it work enough for them to not have to try and start all over with somebody new or try and get someone like I'm blanking on the name. Their backup who's their backup? I'm blanking on his name.
Who?
Gardner Minshew? Is Minshew?
Oh, yeah. Okay, the Eagle. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I was blanking on it for a second. I was about to just. No, I mean, I think they'd rather keep trying to make it work with Hurts if he doesn't work out. And Lamar is actually really interesting because Tyler Huntley is shown to be very capable and honestly a pretty good quarterback. So I think if they did decide to move on from Lamar, they do have options, but I think he's also very safe there unless he shows signs of constantly getting hurt where they might not return their value. But yeah, I think all those are pretty safe outside of Tua and Lance.
All right, folks. So those are our what ifs for the 2022 season. The short answer is what if ... Well, all of that, could have significant impact on the dynasty landscape, but also importantly, as we progress through the season, as things are going on, value checks and trade values and things like that. So those are important things to keep an eye on as well. For example, let's say Hurts poops the bed and Minshew's in there in week 5, right? What is that doing to your Devonta Smith share and that sort of thing? So, something to keep an eye on as well. So if you are listening on the Going for Two live podcast feed, please take a second to subscribe, rate, and review. That'll do us a big favor. Time for plugs. Josh, where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Rotonaut. It's ROTONAUT. I'll be starting doing weekly articles during the season as well as weekly rankings. My articles are going to be 10 things. So 10 things to look for in week 2, week 3, etc. You can find all that on goingfor2.com as well as Dynasty and redraft rankings.
Awesome. You can find me on Twitter at ffjunkie_. I contributed to the players we're excited to see in week 1, which I think, Josh, you did as well.
I never got around to it with missing work, getting sick and all that.
Okay, right on, yeah. And so that's still up there. And Hurts, by the way, was the person that I highlighted there. I am really curious to see how this season starts. This make or break season starts out for him. I also have a couple other articles up there. Dynasty rankings for both me and Josh are on goingfor2.com as well. I've been dragging my feet on the 10 Commandments of Dynasty trading. So hopefully by this time when we're live again next week, I will have done it. Hopefully, maybe cross your fingers. You can find me at my other Dynasty podcast at Dynasty Fever Pod on Twitter. Let's see, goingfor2.com, as we said, Going for Two Live on Twitter. And so Going for Two on Twitter, Going for Two live YouTube channel, which is going to feature coming up in a few minutes, Cover Zero, our IDP podcast, live at 9 Eastern. And then as the season progresses, we're also going to be getting that DFS show in there on Saturday nights as well. No, Mr. Scampers, thank you for tuning in and hopping in to the chat.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Julia, for hopping in. You enjoy week 1 as well. And
great questions, by the way.
Yeah, that was fun. So that's a wrap for us. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you when we see you.